Welcome Prof Skills 2 students. This is your revision class in week 6 of semester B. We're going to just go through everything that we've discussed up until this point. Remembering that there is a live Zoom class on August the 25th at 6 o'clock, the details of which are posted on Core Campus. So let's get started. In the first class, we discussed an introduction to professional skills. We largely spoke about interpersonal and human skills, which are also known as soft skills. Having a good grasp of these skills will help you become a better employee, employer, manager, and just person in general. You're not born with these skills. If you think about babies, they have the least interpersonal skills of anyone that you know. You do have to learn them, which is where professional skills 2 comes into play. We touched on Kolb's model of experiential learning, which is covered in Self-Assessment Questionnaire 1. If you haven't done this already, pause this video and complete the Self-Assessment Questionnaire so that you've got that on hand and you know the results. In Lecture 2, we discussed self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is one of the most important aspects of this course and definitely one of the most important things that you should know about yourself. Things that we discussed in self-awareness are questions such as, who are you? What are your beliefs? What do other people think of you? What's your calling or your passion? And what are your spiritual beliefs? We also discussed how you are able to know if you have low self-awareness and then how to improve upon that. What self-awareness does, amongst many, many things, is it will help you submit a really great CV. It will help you answer really tricky interview questions. It will help you get your dream job as well as keep your dream job, and also help you gain promotions. But on top of that, it will also give you a really huge advantage over your competitors if you decide to be an entrepreneur. So in that lecture, I said that you would leave this course with a really great CV and a weakness. Do you know what your weakness is? Do you have an answer to that really tough question, what is your weakness? There's so many different methods that you can use to increase your self-awareness, and these include things such as self-performance appraisals and online tools. Please don't think that you need to spend a lot of money to increase your self-awareness. You don't. There are so many free resources available to you to increase your self-awareness, so don't let finances be the thing that holds you back. And then finally, we discussed the role of adaptability when it comes to self-awareness, being able to change. Lecture 3, we looked at self-management. We looked at things like your values, your ability to figure out your goals, and then the ability to plan in order to achieve these goals so that they're in line with your values. And this ties back into having agency or the ability to act independently, and again the idea of adaptability comes back. If you haven't already taken some time to figure out your own short and long-term goals, pause this video and write down a couple, maybe 1 or 2 short and long-term goals. In Lecture 4, we looked at your emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, EQ and EI respectively. And what this includes is your awareness of your own and other, or yourself and others. We look at emotional management, so the ability to manage your emotions, as well as interpersonal skills, which again is the focus of professional skills 2. You need to be able to monitor your own feelings, but you also need to be able to monitor the feelings of others and use this information from yourself and from others to guide your own behavior. In many cases, EQ is actually far more important than IQ. And the great thing about EQ is that you can improve it. You can get better through improving your self-awareness, and you can improve it through practice. We discussed other questions like how to identify low EI and how to apply the skills that you learn in EI, as well as improving your weaknesses. Lecture 5, we discussed your experiential learning. So we looked at the difference between an internship, experiential learning, and learnership. We looked at the purpose of your internship, which is, your experiential learning, which is to gain experience in your given field, hopefully that of media. We looked at a couple of different ways for you to give the best impression of yourself. We looked at managing expectations, what you should expect when you get there and throughout the experience. We looked at a few different tips that you can employ during this time, and we discussed again and again adaptability. What if you rock up on your first or second day of work and your host employer expects you to use a form of software that you've never ever used before? What will you do in that situation? And then we touched again on CVs. I'm just curious if you started working on yours yet. Obviously, these are really important for the assessments, but they're also really, really important in life. So having a really great CV is going to be a really, really important skill. In Lecture 6, we discussed CVs. So you know that your CV needs to be discussed with a company in mind. You can't just send out a generic CV to every single company you apply. Creating your CV, in my opinion, is best done with online tools such as Canva, but you can also use the structure from your Professional Skills 1 textbook or any other Word document structure. Obviously, this is a little bit more text-based, whereas if you use tools such as Canva, you can add graphic elements to them as well. In your textbooks, there's a checklist for things to check before you submit your CV, as well as steps that you need to follow before you apply, such as researching the company, knowing who your CV is going to, etc. And then we covered directions for designing both a winning CV and composing a specialized cover letter, because these are both really important documents that will get your foot in the door of a company or not. Lecture 7, we had the F1 briefing. Please make sure that you are giving yourself ample time to finish this off. Do not leave this assessment to the last minute. Although it is not an incredibly difficult assessment, it is taxing in terms of time and the amount of thought that you have to put into it. You cannot give surface answers for this assessment, so you need to make sure that you give it the time that it deserves. Start with doing all of the self-assessment questionnaires to ensure that you understand the scoring systems. And obviously, get in touch with me if you have any questions. Lecture 8, we looked at sending interpersonal messages. So human communication is the basis for interaction. We can't have relationships without communication. So it's important to be a good communicator, because this will help you in all levels of life, personally, at college, and also obviously in the workplace. So if you're an effective communicator, people understand what you are saying at all times. They're not constantly confused by what you are saying, which means that you can both be on the same page. So to ensure that you are understood, you need to make sure that you are clear. You need to maintain credibility or be trustworthy, so don't lie. And ask for and be open to feedback. This is quite a recurring theme, feedback. Especially because in Lecture 9, we discussed providing feedback. So we looked at the value of feedback, positive versus negative feedback, and tips on how to give good feedback. So since this class that happened last week, have you considered how open to feedback you are? Would you rather avoid it, or are you happy to take it as an opportunity to learn? So you're welcome to pause this video and give this a little bit of a thought between now and when you start playing again. Feedback is really important as it helps us grow and to learn from our mistakes, because we are all going to make mistakes. Whether we learn from them or not, that's what separates us. But if good feedback is given in a bad way, it really will stop us from improving. So it's therefore really important to learn how to give good feedback, so that the person that you're giving feedback to is able to take this as positive feedback and grow and develop from there. But it's also really important to learn how to receive bad feedback. And I don't only mean feedback on things when you've made mistakes, but I mean feedback from a person who is not giving it to you in a very good way. And the reason that you have to learn from this, or you have to learn to take it, is because it can be a learning experience from you. Also remember that you can't actually control the behavior of others. You never ever can. We think we can, but we can't. You can only control your own behavior. And one of the best ways to control your own behavior is learning from mistakes. Because if we are not willing to learn from mistakes, we're not willing to make mistakes, and then we never try. So this is a really important part of self-development. In Lecture 10, we looked at communicating across cultures. And the reason that we discussed this is because in South Africa and across the world, people are different, and we can differ on the basis of many different characteristics. There are things like global and local cultural differences, race, gender, sexuality, general preferences such as music taste, car taste, fashion sense, as well as age and economic background. And what this section does is it takes all the lessons that we've learned so far in prof skills and it puts them into practice in communicating with people who are different from you, which is quite important. How do we speak to people who are completely different from us? How do we make sure that we understand each other? But also, it can be difficult communicating with people who are similar to us. And I want you to just take a moment to think about why it could be possible that it's difficult to communicate with people who are similar to us too. Alright, so that takes us up to where we are now. This week we're going to be looking at lectures 11 and 12, which are still forthcoming. And in these classes we are going to look at setting goals for others, as well as coaching, counseling, and mentoring. In setting goals for others, we're going to look at topics such as personal goals versus institutional goals, knowing where we're headed in both life and work, as well as SMART goals. Now, please don't assume that you know everything about SMART goals. Please take some time to go and research these, watch the slides, so that you can reacquaint yourself with exactly what goes into setting a SMART goal. And then in coaching, counseling, and mentoring, we look at how to help others in a professional setting and in a professional way. We look at helping to identify the source of a problem. We look at the importance of unconditional positive regard when listening to other people's problems. What this means is that listening to people's problems without judging them, without being judgmental. And then finally, you guessed it, the importance of feedback. So as I've mentioned throughout these first couple of weeks, there have been a few recurring themes that have popped up. And some of the themes include things like adaptability. How have you shown adaptability during 2020? It's been a crazy year. How have you developed, grown, and learned from all of the experiences that you've had in 2020? And how can you put this into play in the workplace? Adaptability is going to be one of the most important skills going forward. And it's important to show prospective employers that you can adapt and change. The next is the importance of feedback for learning and development. I've touched on this a couple of times because that's kind of what experience is it's this circular motion of trying something, getting feedback, and improving on the basis of that feedback. Trying again, getting more feedback, and improving even further. Because the moment you stop trying, the moment you stop listening to feedback, is the moment you stop developing. And that's problematic. Although a lot of people are stuck there at a very young age already. And then finally, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and self-management. How good are you at working with others? Can you work in a group? Can you communicate with others? Do you know yourself well? Or do you not know yourself at all? It sounds weird to think that we don't know the person that we spend 100% of our time with. But how well do you actually know yourself? And that's where I'm going to end. If you have any other questions, as always, get in touch with me. And please be sure to attend the lecture on the 25th of August at 6 o'clock in the evening. The details of this lecture are on Zoom. Thanks, everyone.